My family called me trash at New Year's brunch, so I quietly removed my name from everything. Hey, I'm Carter Lewis. I'm 34. And on New Year's Day, over Eggs Benedict and a mimosa I didn't want, a 7-year-old dropped mashed potatoes on my plate and called me family trash. Yeah. That was the beginning. We were at my parents' place in Denver, packed in like polite strangers pretending to be relatives. Everyone was doing that forced laugh, paper-thin conversation thing you do when half the table hates each other but still wants to be tagged in the same holiday photos. I was chewing through my half-cold eggs when my niece, my sister's daughter, walked over, tipped her leftovers directly onto my plate like I was compost, and said, loud and proud, "Mom says your family trash?" I didn't react. Not a blink. Not a glance around the table to see who flinched. Because I already knew. No one would. They never do. I just stared at my ruined food like it could explain something. And what it explained was this: I was done. That night, after the dishes were rinsed and the group chat had the gall to send one of those "Love my tribe" selfies, I got a message from my mom. 5 words. "You're out of our lives." 2 people hard reacted. I smiled at my screen and wrote back one sentence. "Everything in my name disappears tomorrow." Then I left the chat. And by midnight, my phone started lighting up like someone pulled the fire alarm on their finances. Funny how silence feels deafening when you're the one paying for the noise. The next morning, I woke up to a phone buzzing like it owed me rent. I didn't check it. I let it hum against the nightstand while I brushed my teeth, made coffee, and stared out the window of my tiny one-bedroom like I was about to start the first day of a new job. In a way, I was, except the job was called not letting people bleed me dry anymore. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, opened my bank app, and clicked into recurring payments. The list looked like a horror movie. First, there was the loan for my parents' house, the same one they almost lost until I stepped in. 10 years of monthly payments draining straight from my account. Then the lease on my sister's SUV, which I co-signed. Just until she gets on her feet. She's been sitting pretty on those feet for 4 years. The car? In her driveway. The bills? All in my name. Then came the family phone plan. 5 lines. Only one of them mine. The others? Mom, Dad, my sister Julia, and her daughter Kayla's iPad. Because apparently a second grader needs unlimited data. Next, health insurance premiums. I added my parents when Dad's job cut their benefits. Then Kayla's after-school coding club, billed monthly. Oh, and let's not forget the streaming services. Everyone shares my accounts. I haven't watched a movie in weeks, but somehow 4 people are midway through different seasons of the same show. All of it stacked into one absurd reality. I was the backbone of a family that wouldn't spit on me if I were on fire. I opened a spreadsheet. I made columns. I wrote names. I wrote amounts, in full spelled out words, because I wanted to feel how heavy 3,984 was compared to 3,984. Then I got to work. The SUV? I contacted the leasing company. They wouldn't remove me, but they could stop autopay. Future bills would be mailed. Julia would get the invoices, not me. Done. The phone plan? I scheduled a downgrade. Just my line, effective next cycle. The others would get a friendly surprise when their phones went dark unless they figured it out. The loan? I stopped the draft. My parents could explain that to the lender themselves. The insurance? Not yet. I'd give them a grace period. But I read every rule, made a note of the next adjustment window, and saved the page. And the after-school club? 1 click. Auto-pay off. Done. As I shut the laptop, the list sat there. Stark. Clear. My name, the one they'd written on every financial lifeboat, was coming off the paperwork. My phone buzzed again. This time I flipped it over. Text from Julia, Mom, Dad, and a new number I didn't recognize. My sister's tone was immediate. Car payment didn't go through. You need to fix this now. It's your lease. Same old script. My responsibility. My name. My problem. But this time? I just read it once. And I didn't write back. 2 days later, we met at a diner. Not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted the confrontation to happen in public, where the screaming might be contained by social etiquette and the waitress refilling coffee might act as emotional security. It was one of those chip formica, bottomless mug places where the bacon is never crispy but always comforting. I chose a booth by the window, ordered black coffee, and waited. They arrived as a unit. Mom first, scanning the room like I was about to deliver a terminal diagnosis. Dad behind her, jaw locked, coat unzipped like he thought this would be over quickly. Julia brought up the rear, Kayla dragging along beside her, still on her tablet. No hugs. No greetings. They sat like they were taking a meeting. Dad spoke first. This needs to stop. Now. You're playing games with mortgages and contracts. This isn't how responsible adults act. I sipped my coffee. Is that right? Mom twisted her napkin like it owed her money. We almost lost the house once, Carter. You know what that stress does to me. I haven't slept. And over what? Because a child said something rude? I leaned back. It's not about what she said. It's about who taught her to say it. Julia crossed her arms. Look, I get it. You're mad. But that SUV's still in your name. If it defaults, collections come to you. You want to be a martyr, fine, but don't tank your credit just to make a point. That was when I pulled out the folder. Neatly printed. Highlighted. Labeled. 10 years of transfers for the house. Lease payments. Phone bills. Insurance premiums. After-school invoices. Every single charge. Every single name. All in my handwriting, all from my accounts. I slid it to the middle of the table and said, This isn't one tantrum. It's a decade. A decade where you treated me like an ATM with Wi-Fi. Dad's eyebrows dropped. He flipped to a lease page. Why didn't you tell us it added up to this? Oh, I did, I said. You just called it being a good son. Mom blinked at a sheet showing the monthly health premium pulled from my paycheck. We thought you liked helping. I laughed. Not bitter, just done. I like sleeping too. But that doesn't mean I want to do it in your house when the bank takes mine. Julia leaned over and stabbed her finger at the failed car payment line. So you're gonna leave me stuck? I need that vehicle, Carter. Kayla needs it. It was Kayla's voice that cut through everything. Still looking down at her coloring menu, she muttered, Mom says you don't really have your own family. That's why you always pay for ours. Every fork paused midair. My mom's hand froze. Dad blinked like the kid had just dropped a live grenade on the table. And Julia? She just turned bright red and stayed silent. I looked straight at her and said, That's why the payment stopped. I grabbed the folder, slid it back into my bag, and stood. No one followed. The next few days were a parade of passive-aggressive text messages dressed up as concern. Julia sent a barrage first. Paragraphs like bullets, accusing me of overreacting, of jeopardizing Kayla's safety, of intentionally sabotaging her ability to keep up appearances. Every sentence was dipped in entitlement. The kind that only grows when someone gets away with calling you selfish while draining your savings. Mom's tone was more emotional. You know your father's blood pressure can't handle this. We thought you were stronger than this. Family doesn't give up over words said by a child. Each line trying to convert guilt into compliance. Dad didn't do long messages. Just a string of short, sharp reminders. You signed. You committed. This isn't how adults act. Not one question about why I'd had enough. Just pure financial finger-pointing. But I didn't reply to any of it. I took Rodri's advice. Rodri, my friend at work who'd quietly coached me through a lot of this mess over the years, once told me, if you don't document it, it didn't happen. So I did. I called my bank and placed official stop payments on the house loan and the SUV lease. requested written confirmations, downloaded every transaction, every bill, started organizing everything in folders, one for the house, one for the car, one for the insurance, one for the damn tablet that somehow had its own data plan. I wasn't burning bridges. I was building a firewall. I called the leasing company again. Told them they could reach out to the secondary contact on the account, Julia. They said they'd make a note, but I was still liable if she defaulted. I understand, I said. But I'm done sponsoring someone else's denial. I didn't even recognize my own voice when I said it. It was calm, steady, like the ground under my feet wasn't crumbling for once. The mortgage lender was next. When I told them the auto draft was cancelled, the guy on the phone read me the late payment policy like I was a teenager missing a credit card payment. I understand the consequences, I said again. But the money isn't coming from me anymore. Every account I detached from made me feel lighter and more nauseous at the same time. Like pulling out a splinter that's been festering for years. You know it needs to come out, but it still stings like hell. Meanwhile, the smaller cracks started to show. Kayla's after-school program emailed a friendly "Payment missed" notice. Mom texted a screenshot of a medical bill. Julia complained that her streaming services were now asking for a credit card. Each little thread unraveling the blanket they thought I'd keep wrapping around them forever. And for the first time in years, I came home to silence. Not the silence of being ignored. The silence of peace. I made dinner. For me. Watched a show I actually liked. On a service I paid for. Alone in an apartment that didn't belong to anyone else but me. And when my phone buzzed with yet another new number trying to guilt me into reconnecting, I let it ring. A week after the diner, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, figured it was another lender calling about a missed payment that wasn't mine anymore. But something made me listen. It was Julia. Her voice was tight, like she was trying not to cry but also trying not to sound like she needed me. A weird combo she's always specialized in. She said, "Kayla's crying every morning before school. She doesn't understand why you're being like this." I almost laughed. Because Kayla understood perfectly. She just repeated the script she was fed, word for word. What Julia meant was, Kayla doesn't like the consequences of you being like this. Then she dropped the line she always keeps in her back pocket. "What do you want me to do, Carter? I'm a single mom." And I finally realized something. I was the one being treated like the single parent. Not Julia. Me. I was the one budgeting around school payments. The one carrying health insurance. The one juggling finances to make sure someone else had transportation, data, a roof over their head. And not once did I get the actual respect of that role, just the bills. So I didn't call her back. Instead, I emailed the SUV lease company again and confirmed the account should reflect no future withdrawals from me. If Julia couldn't manage the monthly payments, they'd be forced to deal with her directly. Same with the mortgage company. That same day, I got an email from Kayla's after-school program. Enrollment suspended until payment received. There was even a smiling robot icon like they were trying to soften the blow. I sat there staring at the screen, remembering all the times Julia bragged about Kayla's advanced skills to her mom friends, like I was just her sponsor. She never once mentioned me by name. Just a family friend who helps sometimes. I wasn't family in their eyes. I was infrastructure. Mom's messages started changing tone. Less, "You're hurting us," and more, "This isn't who you are." She sent me a picture of the house with a caption. "Do you really want this to be the memory Kayla has of you?" I almost dropped my phone. Because it hit me, the memory Kayla will have of me is already written. It's the one Julia taught her. That I'm the trash bag she drops food into. That I'm the fallback, the ghost credit card, the emotional punching bag who'll always bounce back for more. And this version of me? The one who said no, for the first time in a decade? They didn't recognize him. Good. Because that guy? He's not just a name on their paperwork anymore. He's a man with boundaries. By mid-February, the fallout finally settled into something quieter, less like an explosion, more like the slow leak of a tire no one knows how to patch. The last of the automated confirmations trickled in. An email from HR at my job: your dependent coverage has been updated. Effective March 1st, your plan will include only the primary policyholder. The next one, from my phone provider: account changes processed. Your current plan includes one line. Please confirm your updated billing preferences. Another from the after-school program: Kayla Lewis has been unenrolled due to non-payment. We'd love to welcome her back anytime, just update your billing information. And that was the strange part, how undramatic it all felt. These weren't confrontations. They were receipts. My phone, once a battlefield of guilt and noise, went quiet. Julia's text stopped. Mom must have run out of emotional currency. Even Dad, the eternal enforcer, had fallen silent after his last "You'll regret this one day" message failed to land. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I used to come home to unpaid invoices and tension sitting in my inbox like squatters. Now, just receipts for groceries I actually ate. Notifications about payments that matched the life I was living, not the lives I was bankrolling. One night, I sat at my desk and opened the folder, the one I'd brought to the diner. Everything was still there. Itemized. Highlighted. Each page a record of a life I'd financed but never belonged to. I added a new sheet. Title: Expenses remaining none. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for 10 years. Rod retexted me that night, checking in. I told him things were finally leveling out. He sent back a simple message: proud of you. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose who to open for. It stuck with me. That's what none of them had understood. They thought I slammed the door on them out of anger. But really, I'd just stopped letting them treat my life like a hallway they could pass through whenever they wanted, dropping their mess along the way. Kayla hadn't reached out. Not that I expected her to. She was a kid parroting what she was taught. But I found myself wondering sometimes what version of this story she'd grow up with. If someday, when she's old enough to need help and think about what help really costs, she'd remember that brunch. That crayon. That folder. That she'd realize I wasn't family trash. I was the trash collector who finally clocked out. Spring rolled in like a sigh of relief. Longer days, softer light, and a kind of stillness I hadn't known I needed. My apartment, once a crash pad between work and obligations, started feeling like an actual home. No shared passwords. No secondhand guilt. I bought a rug. A bright, ridiculous rug I would have never justified before, too loud, too unnecessary. Now, it was perfect. I wasn't budgeting around surprise co-pays and SUV tolls anymore. The floor under my feet actually felt like mine. I even started cooking again. Real meals, not just boxed things eaten over the sink. My fridge held vegetables I'd picked because I liked them, not because I needed to stretch a budget warped by other people's emergencies. There was no Kayla around to eat the snacks. No Julia asking for grocery money. Just this once. No mom handing me a CVS receipt like it was a summons. My credit score ticked up. Just a few points, but enough to feel like the universe was patting me on the back, whispering, "Good job, buddy. Keep going." I ran into one of Julia's old friends at a local bookstore. She didn't recognize me at first, probably because I wasn't hunched over like someone carrying 3 generations on his back. "Hey, Carter, right?" she said. "Julia mentioned you moved or something. Everything okay?" I smiled. "Yeah. Everything's finally quiet." She tilted her head. "She's driving that old sedan now. Says it's temporary, but you know. Kayla's doing fine at the local school. Honestly, she seems happier." I nodded, thanked her, and walked out with a used hardcover I didn't need but wanted. That tiny exchange stuck with me though, not because of the gossip, but because of the tone. There was no judgment. Just surprise. Like people around the perimeter of my family were seeing what I had, they were surviving. Not thriving. Not spiraling. Just surviving without me. That was the part that broke the final illusion. For years I told myself if I pulled back, everything would collapse. The house. The car. Kayla's future. It was my fear that kept me hooked. My guilt that made me believe I was the only thing standing between them and ruin. But they were adapting. Which meant they always could have. I just made it easier for them not to. I got home, hung my new book on the growing shelf I'd finally made room for, and poured a drink. Sat by the open window. Let the cool air in. And for the first time in maybe a decade, I didn't feel like a villain in my own story. I felt like a man who saved himself. One evening in late May, I stood in my kitchen watching steam rise off a pot of rice, and it hit me. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for the next crisis. Not for the next call demanding something under the disguise of love. Not for permission to say, enough. The world hadn't ended when I stepped away. No lawsuits. No flames. Just a shift. A long overdue redistribution of responsibility. The last time I heard from Julia, it was a short message. I hope someday you understand how much this hurt everyone. I read it. Deleted it. Didn't even bother drafting a reply. Because here's the truth. I did understand. I just stopped pretending their hurt outranked mine. Mom never followed up after the group chat exploded. Dad went quiet too, probably still believing that adults who sign papers shouldn't walk away from duty. But I wasn't walking away from duty. I was walking away from being used like a credit card with a conscience. And the strangest part? I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of them. Of what a family could have been if they'd seen me as a person, not a safety net. But I wasn't nostalgic for Sunday dinners or forced brunches. I didn't ache for the sarcastic birthday cards, or the yearly arguments over who ruined Thanksgiving. I didn't even miss Kayla's little voice, because it had never really been hers. It was a script she was taught, and I wasn't going to stick around for another rehearsal. The folder from the diner now lived at the bottom of a drawer, tucked next to documents that actually belonged to me, my lease, my health insurance, my receipts from a life with boarders. And the numbers? The numbers finally added up. I wasn't rich. But I was free. And freedom, as it turns out, costs exactly the price of knowing your own worth. I tell this story not to be applauded, but because someone out there needs to hear it. Someone who's drowning in just this once. And you're the only one we can count on. Someone who's been told their value comes from what they can give, not who they are. If that's you, listen carefully. Love doesn't come with invoices. And family isn't supposed to feel like a second job with no paycheck and no days off. The first time you say no will feel brutal. The second time will feel terrifying. The third time will feel like oxygen. And eventually, you'll stop counting, because no will no longer feel like rebellion. It'll feel like peace. So take the folder. Open the app. Look at the numbers. And ask yourself, what part of your life do you actually own? Then make a choice that sounds like your voice, not theirs. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion. Thanks for listening.